The Greenland Trap. Why America's biggest prize could be its greatest mistake. January 17, 2026. This may be the day history records as the moment the United States stopped leading an alliance and started charging rent for it. What looks like just another round of U.S. tariffs is actually the opening move of something far more dangerous. Because suddenly, everyone is talking about Greenland. On the surface, Greenland looks like a geopolitical jackpot. The world's largest island. An estimated 38 million tons of rare earth oxides locked beneath melting ice. A missile defense position so perfectly placed it makes Pentagon planners dream. But here's the question no one wants to ask. What if this gift destroys American power from the inside? Why Greenland suddenly matters. This story begins with climate change. As Arctic ice melts, Greenland is becoming accessible for the first time in history. Projects like Kvanefjeld and Tanbreez sit on some of the largest undeveloped rare earth deposits on Earth, including heavy rare earths like dysprosium and terbium. These aren't buzzwords. They're the materials that make F-35 fighter jets, nuclear submarines, and missile guidance systems actually work. Here's the choke point. China controls 80 to 90% of global rare earth processing. Not mining, processing. In a real conflict, Beijing wouldn't need to fire a shot. Could shut down U.S. defense production within months, simply by cutting supply. Greenland holds only about 1.25% of global reserves, but that's enough to rank 7th in the world and includes the largest undeveloped heavy rare earth deposits on the planet. Add to that 7.8 billion barrels of oil, 91.9 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. On paper, this looks like strategic independence for a century. That's the pitch. Greenland isn't just resources, it's geography. The Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's slightly flattened at the poles. That matters. The shortest missile path from Russia to the US isn't over the Atlantic or Pacific. It's over the Arctic, straight across Greenland. At the top of the island sits Patuxent Space Base, home to early warning radar that can detect threats thousands of miles away. In an era of hypersonic weapons, where warning time shrinks from 30 minutes to 10, Greenland is the difference between response and annihilation. So yes, Greenland matters. But here's where the story turns. The historical illusion. Supporters point to history. Louisiana, that's not vision. That's coercion. And European diplomats already have a name for it. Crimea 2.0. That comparison alone should terrify anyone who cares about American moral authority. The nightmare no one is talking about. Dutch disease. Now assume the U.S. somehow acquires Greenland. The mines open. The oil flows. The capital pours in. What happens next? Economists call it Dutch disease, and it has destroyed more. Purchase. 1803. Alaska Purchase. 1867. Both were mocked. Both were later celebrated. This administration wants to stand in that lineage. But there's a critical difference. Louisiana was sold willingly. Russia wanted out of Alaska. Greenland is not for sale. Denmark said no. Greenland's government said no. The population said no. When you can't buy something but try to take it anyway, economies then wars. It works in 3 steps. Spending effect. Resource wealth floods the economy. Wages rise. Housing, services, and construction explode in price. Resource movement effect. Capital and labor abandon manufacturing for extraction. Why run a factory when a mine pays twice as much? Currency effect. Export revenue strengthens the dollar, making every non-resource American export more expensive globally. Now apply this to the United States. An economy already hollowed out. Manufacturing already fragile. Industrial jobs already politically concentrated in swing states. A 10 to 15% dollar appreciation, entirely plausible from Greenland alone, would devastate exporters like Boeing, Ford, Intel, and John Deere. Factories wouldn't close in New York or D.C. They'd close in Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. We would solve a Cold War security problem by triggering a 21st century economic collapse. But what about Norway? Yes, Norway found oil and avoided disaster. But America isn't Norway. Norway has centralized wage controls. The US doesn't. Norway saves its surplus abroad. The US runs chronic deficits. Norway had institutions ready before the oil arrived. America doesn't and won't build them. Greenland's workforce is 36,000 people. One major mine needs 5,000 workers. That's not development. That's colonial administration. The alliance cost. NATO isn't just tanks and troops. It's trust. Every ally watched the United States pressure Denmark, a founding NATO member, over territory. The rational response? Hedge. Diversify. Reduce dependence. The EU is now discussing using its anti-coercion instrument, designed to fight China, against the United States. The irony is brutal. Trade deals are collapsing. European defense spending is rising without Washington. Intelligence sharing is shrinking. NATO isn't exploding. It's hollowing out. Meanwhile, China isn't making noise. China's strategy isn't ideological. It's consistent. We don't change the rules every election. We don't threaten tariffs over disagreement. We build ports, railways, supply chains. Indonesia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, none are choosing China because they love Beijing. They're choosing it because America has become volatile. While Washington obsesses over Arctic ice, China is quietly locking down global trade routes. We're fighting for territory. They're rewriting the system. The final math. Strategic gains. Reduced rare earth dependence. Arctic missile defense dominance.
Symbolic territorial consolidation.
Strategic costs.
Manufacturing collapse via dollar appreciation.
Alliance fragmentation through coercion. Loss of moral authority. Acceleratio.